Welcome to Tips, the Townsend Institute podcast series, a show produced by the Townsend Institute at Concordia University, Irvine. This podcast shares stories of leadership, coaching, and counseling experiences that have shaped the lives and careers of our guests, who then provide tips aimed toward helping listeners grow in both their personal and professional lives. I'm Dr. John Townsend, psychologist, organizational consultant, and author of over 30 books, including the New York Times best-selling Boundaries series. I'm also the founder of the Townsend Institute, and I'm excited to introduce your podcast hosts, Dr. Ashlie Andrew and Dr. Gilbert Puget.
The Summer Olympics may be over, but we are still in the gold zone here at the Townsend Institute podcast series. We are wrapping up our Olympic-themed series with a topic that has garnered more attention than ever before, the mental health aspect of elite athletes.
I'm excited for this one, Gilbert. Simone Biles is mesmerizing as she flips, jumps, and swings her way into Olympic stardom. But she, along with other elite athletes, has also drawn attention for her vulnerability with mental health struggles. Today's guest, Concordia Counseling Program alum Kaila Predney, talks mental game errors, affecting even some of the youngest athletes today. She works as a mental performance consultant at a sports psychology group, so her insight will help shed light on just how difficult it can be to climb and stay at the top of one's game. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Townsend Institute podcast series. Here we are with our fourth and final of our Olympic-themed episodes here, and welcome, Kaila Predney. Hi, Kaila. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Glad you're here, Kaila.
We're so excited to have you on the podcast. You are coming in as a guest, but also a graduate of our Master's in Mental Health Counseling program. Currently, you serve as a mental performance consultant for a sports psychology group here in Southern California. Tell us a little bit more about what that means and how you found yourself in this area of mental health.
Yeah, so how I found myself here is such a rad God story, right? So I had my education through the Townsend Institute in the mental health counseling program. Absolutely loved it. So once I became a registered associate professional clinical counselor, I started to look for practices that were offering supervision, because that's where I'm at right now. And just through a lot of prayer and literally life-altering conversations, I knew I wanted to work with athletes. That was my heart. I knew that if I was going to do 3,000 hours of, that work, that I wanted to enjoy it, and I wanted to make sure it was something I was passionate about.
Yeah.
So I was doing a lot of research, and I found this practice in Newport Beach, and it's a sports psychology practice where we do both clinical and sports psychology work. And I work there as an associate and then also as a mental performance consultant. And what that looks like is I'm on my own process to becoming certified as a mental performance consultant.
Okay.
And that certification process entails specific education, supervised hours, and passing an exam at the end in order to become certified. And so that's where I'm at right now. The courses include both master's level or doctoral level courses in clinical or sports psychology.
Okay.
So that's kind of where I'm at right now. As a mental performance consultant, I consult athletes who may deal with confidence issues, performance anxiety, improvement in visualization, mental blocks, etc., stuff like that. And then as an associate, obviously, is the clinical side. So say some of these issues are coming in with, there's room to dig further into that, then I'm competent to dig deeper into the clinical needs of it and provide healing in that aspect.
So you have got to see a lot of struggles, right? I mean, not only when you were doing athletics at a high level, but also now working in this sports world with all these high level athletes, especially out here in Orange County. All of these things are happening. What are some common struggles athletes face, and how do you help them work through them?
What I love about where I'm at is we also have that athletic experience. So it brings a whole nother layer of relatability. and empathy. It's not, required in the field, but it's definitely helpful and an advantage, so I feel like in this practice, I have previous player hat, coach hat, clinician hat, mental performance hat. And so with the struggles that we see athletes face, it could be the matter of confidence, anxiety, stress, whether it's from the sport alone, or maybe it's something going on out off the field or, off the court. And, our brain doesn't know, physical boundaries of like, oh, I'm in the gym, that stays at home. Like, that's just not how we work, so whether it's from the sport or outside of the sport, we deal with issues like anxiety, depression, OCD, mental blocks. We just normalize it. I think with athletes, there's this ideology of like energy that feels negative, which is the anxiety, the stress. It's bad, but not all stress is bad. We need that stress to survive. That's just how our brain works. So it's learning how to normalize it and how to be a little more comfortable with it, and then obviously learn how to cope with it better, and how to manage our way through that.
We think about some of these athletes at the highest stage. Again, being an Olympic themed episode, we talk about like a Simone Biles, who was very open and vocal about the mental blocks that she experienced years ago. I think Gilbert had brought up a little bit earlier, basketball player, Meta World Peace, talked about his sports psychologist, and he was at the peak of his career. I'm assuming athletes coming out at that high level to talk about it, that must help normalize it for younger athletes, right?
Absolutely. And I think that almost gives, for even parents, it gives them a piece of like, okay, my kid's going to be okay. Because I think too, when you see Olympians being honest about where they're at, professional athletes, collegiate athletes, like seeing, top of the line here, admitting like, I'm still working on myself. I'm not perfect,
Right.
And so I think that kind of gives people a little bit of peace and the normalizing of like, okay, it's okay. My, high school athlete is a little anxious right now. Maybe it seems a little crippling right now, but it looks like, that's something we can work with,
And especially being part of the Townsend Institute, Kaila. I mean, we talked about the Townsend growth model, and I think often we forget about the soil part, the grace, truth, and time, right? Everybody wants that if it's their kid or for themselves, they think they ought to be an elite athlete immediately, and they forget about the time and all of this that goes on with it. So yeah.
And that's like instilling patience in the process, patience in the growth, right? No matter where it's growth of attachment, separation, integration, like you need patience, no matter what stage of life you're in. That's in life in general, but as an athlete as well, for sure.
Wow. Well, and you know that better than anyone, having been a collegiate athlete, like you talked about, you still coach today, you wear all these different hats. I know one of the things I read about in some of my research was this phrase, mental game errors. Are there certain sports or age groups that seem to be more prone to these mental game errors than others, or what's kind of the differences there?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Each sport has its own unique challenges, right? And I would consider sports that are more, mental in the sense are sports that have more time to think, they're like golf example, baseball, tennis, those are 4 to 5 hour matches. Sports with more uncontrollable variables versus controllable, refs, umpires, all of that, especially for overthinkers, busy brains, right? So then that's a whole nother piece, is that it might not be sports specific, but it could be just personality or particular minds or mindsets, perfectionists. I think being a perfectionist has its perks, but it's also, there's that side where there is a little bit of that mindset that could use some altering, of just like a little more grace, like we said, a little more grace and than truth in that sense, but also someone who may be a little more disconnected. So maybe they're not as rattled in a sense by the stress or the pressure, but is being too disconnected the better option, so there's like a balance in just learning athletes' personalities on top of like the sport in that sense, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Kaila, right now we're in an Olympic year, right? I mean, it's going on right now, and arguably the largest stage for many of these
Yeah.
around the world, right? And so, what do you think they're going through now as they compete or prepare to compete on this international stage?
Gosh, yeah. Well, I would say, at this level, their preparation, as should any athlete's preparation, be routine. I would assume they're not doing anything drastically different than what they would do for any competition. That is the point of routines. It's familiarity, even when surroundings are new. It gives you that peace. It helps reduce the stress and anxiety. And I would imagine all sorts of emotions going through their heads, leading up to this. Townsend talked about in a few episodes ago about milestones, the significance of it, the importance of taking a step back, slowing down, recognizing the significance of what you're doing right now. So I would hope they have room and time to do that as well, and I would suggest the same concepts he brought up, slow down, take it in, be proud of where you are, be excited, enjoy it. He said like those mental pictures, right? Take 3 seconds just to look around. Like that's both clinical and sport, that's visualization, pause, look, be present, be mindful, enjoy it, and then also remind yourself you're prepared for it. It's not the matter of complete removal of the stress and anxiety and all the emotions. It's learning how to perform with it and use it to your advantage for sure.
That's so great. That's so great. That's neat to kind of put us in, I guess, somewhat a little bit the minds of what these athletes are going through. Well, on the same respect, we probably have some athletes that are listening into this podcast. We hope so, or maybe parents, family, friend of athletes. What advice do you have for them to help kind of prevent these mental health errors or blocks from getting in their way?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of spoke about it earlier, but there's an ideology evolving in the homes where our athletes kind of connect struggle to failure, adversity to something to fear and avoid. So the idea of preventing errors is tough because we can't. We're human in sports and in life. Like it's not going to be perfect. So this fear of failure and adversity translates to the field, court, wherever the athlete performs. So as parents, coaches, athletes, clinicians, we must normalize adversity and stress. We have to prioritize building resilience, and so the advice is, not to be afraid of it, but to embrace it. As parents, we model our own responses to adversity and failure and struggle. Kids watch, whether the kids are intentionally watching or not, they're observers, so they're also observing how mom and dad are handling it, how mom and dad respond to my lack of playtime, how mom and dad are responding to maybe coaches' decisions that maybe we don't understand or agree with. And then obviously as athletes, just going back to the grace piece, give yourself grace, be patient with yourself. You are a believer, integrate that faith, bring God into it. I feel like sometimes we forget that it's not all on us. These are God-given abilities and strengths God's given us. And we need to incorporate him in all aspects of our life. And that includes our sport, and then more often than not, you realize, okay, God's with me. It isn't all on me. And that honestly kind of makes me feel better, that it's not all on me.
You have the clinical experience and training, the education, but also a coach, a player. I can just imagine how relatable you must be for these young athletes coming in and needing to be served.
And I also think about it because I know so many, and I think, Ashlie, you probably do too, as you start getting into sports, everybody has a like a private coach, right, to work on skills, how to with soccer, everybody in softball, it feels like
Yeah.
has like 8
I want to
right
say something
coaches.
about that.
Yeah. But then why wouldn't you think about the mental side if you're thinking more about the physical skill
Yeah.
side?
That is
So,
literally a piece that I always mention in my intake sessions with parents and kids. Just like you need physical reps, you need mental reps as well. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like you come and see me for one session, come fix my kid. She's throwing up before a game. Help her not do that anymore. We have one session, maybe she doesn't throw up for one tournament. Okay, thanks. It's like, no, like that was one.
Yeah.
No,
Come
just
back.
you need like physical reps. You need practice
Yeah.
to be a consistent player physically. You need your time here to be consistently healthy mentally.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you think about injuries, that you have. So you have
Yeah.
a sprained ankle or something like that. Chances are you're getting that diagnosed by a doctor. Maybe it's getting, wrapped and you're going through some physical therapy and you're going to have checkups along the way to see
Yeah.
how the healing is progressing. And so you get these errors or these blocks in your head. Why would you not have the checkups or, like you said, the reps to check in on that?
Yeah. And that piece is why I got into this field, because when I transferred to Concordia, I was injured.
Mm,
So I didn't even know if I was going to play anymore, but they recruited me still.
mm,
And it was really tough, like
Yeah.
emotionally, spiritually, mentally, because it was my wrist. So it was all hobbies, volleyball, surfing, piano.
Oh,
Didn't do anything.
oh.
Oh,
I was a
wow.
wreck. And I was like, God, why?
Yes.
Like, is this going to be forever?
Mm,
And I felt like people could relate in a sense, but it's like, you don't understand, my sport literally gives me life and
mhm,
so much joy. And I'm just an active person. I need it. So that
mhm,
was a piece where I was like, I knew I wanted to do counseling because I had a mentor in high school, right? Spiritually, she was a Christian woman, awesome. But after that injury, I was like, I want to help athletes who are dealing with injury. Like, 'cause it's not easy. Like you
mhm,
look at the depression rates, the suicide rates,
mhm.
Yeah.
at the
Mhm.
college level, it's there, it's real,
It's real.
and it's because, again, that relatability piece, and we talk about it in Townsend, the attunement, the attachment, and just stepping in and just being where they are. Like, I've been there and I'm sorry. Or even if I haven't been there, that
Mhm,
really sucks.
mhm.
Mhm.
So just having someone, like that really, really kind of helped me step into it more,
Yeah.
for sure. And that's why I also enjoy my work with athletes with injury returning to play post injury, because there's a fear of re-injury.
Mhm.
That's
There's the
right.
fear of I'll never catch up,
Mm,
or so and so's better than me now. I'll
yeah,
never get back, and it's the busy brain, because maybe you have more time to worry.
yeah.
I read something last night, which is completely random, but it's the Wally Pipp syndrome. So Wally Pipp is the guy who didn't play one day in baseball because he had a headache. Well, the guy they put in was Lou Gehrig.
Oh,
And then Lou Gehrig never missed a game for 2,000 games. And so everybody said, oh, you don't want to be a Wally Pipp and take a day off because you might not ever get back in there. I was like,
Yeah.
I've never heard of that. So, yeah.
Yeah.
wow. Wow, that's interesting. And what you talked about, just being so wrapped up in your identity, right? And for so many of these athletes, it just feels like it starts younger and younger. It's getting
Yeah.
so competitive. You see athletes, at least, different from maybe when I was growing up. You played a lot of sports, multi-sports later into
Yes.
life. And now I feel like things have gotten so competitive. You're starting to narrow down your sport a little
Yeah.
bit earlier on if you're going to
Yeah.
go, say, play club, play more competitive. And so
Yeah.
if you've been a volleyball player or you've been a basketball player or a softball player since you were 4, and now what
Yeah.
happens when you hit 18 and you might have to start to kind of hang up those cleats or I mean, that's been your identity. It's hard.
Specialization is definitely hitting younger and younger. In the club world, the pay to play, is getting
Mhm.
more, and like it's nuts. It's definitely a different upbringing, for sure. I grew up playing volleyball and soccer my whole
Yeah.
life. So,
Yeah.
or actually, I grew up playing soccer, and then volleyball was kind of just like oh, I'm getting taller. I like,
Let's try this out.
I'm playing with my neighbor, like this is fun. And oh, like I'm getting kind of good at this, like
Yeah.
it's just like that's just not a thing anymore. And but I still encourage it, like do as many as you can, as long as you can, physically, mentally, emotionally, academically,
Mhm.
Yeah.
just in all aspects for sure.
You spoke a little bit earlier about what you saw during COVID when we were chatting before with some
Yeah.
parents, right? And all
Yeah.
of that. Tell us a little bit about something you're seeing that now as coaches, as consultants, you got to deal with that you didn't maybe had to 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah. So, dealing with athletes, especially around the high school age, maybe even freshman year of college, that generation of athletes right now,
Mm-hmm.
if we look back of how old they were during COVID, it was around, middle school,
Mm-hmm.
which is a huge developmental stage as a child and as an athlete, especially competitive elite athletes. Middle school is where you really fine tune those motor skills.
Mm-hmm.
You really perfect some things that, should be pretty clean by this point. You're getting ready for high school. And I think, parents, don't ever want to see their kids struggle. So then during middle school and COVID, putting their education in a different, light, sports obviously was affected. And
Mhm.
you get kids who went through that. And then, they're going from like sixth grade, club soccer team, or ASO
Mm-hmm.
even. And then they're next thing you know, they're in ninth grade, trying out with these 18-year-olds that are seniors, and it's just like, like it's just a lot, and that's not their fault, but it's also like this is where we're at. Like this is, unfortunately, these are the cards you're dealt right now, but we're
Yeah.
gonna make the most of it. And so I think in a sense, it's just learning how to catch up in a sense. And like you're in your own journey and that's fine,
Mhm.
So I think it's just normalizing it again, but also recognizing that, don't stress if your child's not confident. The years that we're building confidence, they didn't have,
Yeah.
Mm.
So it's just kind of recognizing that those middle school years, for example, are confidence building, explorative, and
Mhm.
it might just be a couple years delayed, and that's
What?
fine.
Well, and you said that in middle school you fine tune some of your abilities, right? Well, now I
Totally.
know where my athletic career went off the rails, right? I mean, actually, I think you've probably seen that. I was right there. If the middle school would have gone a little differently, I don't know,
You would have been taken off.
taken
You'd
off,
be in
man.
Paris right now.
Yeah,
In Paris.
Hey, with the
Oh,
right mindset, you could catch up, Gilbert.
you do. You do. Kayla's
We
going
can
to
work
stay
on
on for a little
that.
session with you after this
I
to
think
help
so.
to help you clear those mental errors there. Uh, well, we love to hear about this growth in this field, right? I think this whole idea of becoming a mental performance consultant in sports
Yeah.
psychology. I'm assuming there were a whole lot of them, decades ago. It's wonderful to hear that this has become a bit more common. What do you hope to see in the future of sports psychology?
Yeah, I mean, I love the trajectory of where it's going right now. It's such an exciting time to be a part of it.
Mhm.
But I would like to see continued growth and direction
Mhm.
in both education and career opportunities, and it's nice to know that the people that are involved in that process are moving it in the right direction. So it's really cool. It's such an evolving field.
Mhm.
Even psychology and counseling world in general, we could say how it's still evolving, working out new regulations, education routes to specific career choices, licensures, all of that, et cetera.
Yeah.
So an even more specific domain, has its own associations, education requirements and opportunities. The need is there, the attention is there. It's only a matter of time,
Mhm.
And Kayla, as you think about this, can you think about? I'm even just thinking about this future of it all and where we're headed and how people are more open, I believe now to getting help than they were a long time ago. What advice do you have for people maybe that are thinking, oh, should I go in and find somebody to talk about this? What advice would you have to a parent or an athlete that are thinking about this?
Yeah. Well, I would say, I think like you said, it's nice that people are talking about it. The exposure's there. Resources are there, so I think it's just taking that step of faith and leaning into it, especially when it's sport related. I would say, there's no harm in exploring, and I think too, another thing that I feel like when someone comes into a practice, whether it's clinical counseling, sports psychology, mental performance, it's not a one size fits all. You are entitled to find the right fit for you, with a clinician, the mental performance consultant too. So I would say like, if you feel comfortable, if you feel like that person can relate and encourage you with your confidence, the anxiety piece, that's a good sign, and then as a professional, as the consultant, we help guide you through being comfortable with what you're going through. And then also that trust factor and that therapeutic relationship to build the coping for it as well. So I would say and encourage parents, that this is a field that can support young athletes, experienced athletes. Like you're never too experienced to receive help, and extra support. It's only an advantage, it's only, helping you go upward, whether you're a young athlete, in the club world, high school athlete, collegiate, professionally, Olympic, at any level, there's always that humility and that realization of like, I would like help, or I want to get better, or I want that consistent of accountability too. And I want to learn new tools on visualizing, confidence, goal setting, my routines, my pre-performance routines, stuff like that. It's always, the resources are endless. It's exciting. Yeah.
We love to hear that. That's great to know, not just as a spectator, right? But just as parents and as supporters of those around us, to know that there's so many resources available, like you said, at every level. I think that's really, really great. Well, Kaila, we're coming to the end of our time here. And as you know, as a listener of our podcast, we end every episode with our takeaway tip. So as a mental performance coach, what takeaway tip do you have for our listeners today?
Well, as a mental performance consultant and also as a Townsend alum, my tip is trust the process. God has instilled in all of us strengths, gifts, experiences that equip us to serve him to our fullest potential and in the most fulfilling way. As an athlete, he's equipped you with the training, with the coaches, the support. As an associate and as an alumni, as a clinician, God uses our program to equip us and evolve us into the clinician. Like personally, me, I am today, like God has used that program and as a clinician person, and God will continue to use what I've learned at Townsend to influence who I will become, and it's just trust it, be patient. It's exciting and so God ordained. And I hope everyone can be encouraged in their sport, in their profession, in their education journey right now, to be patient and trust where you're at.
Well said. Well, thank you so much, Kaila. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it so much and hope to see you back with us soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
If you enjoy the Townsend Institute podcast series, head to our website at cui.edu/Townsend to find out more about the certificates, bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees offered through Concordia University, Irvine. With programs in mental health counseling, executive coaching and consulting, and organizational leadership, We have a variety of faith-based programs dedicated to helping you fulfill your academic and professional goals, all the while furthering your competence, character, and connection. Again, that's cui.edu/Townsend.